Alright, I think I'm just gonna get started with this. Everyone's filed in, so for those who don't know, this was made by Pink Puffy Pastry here. This is a team comp guide document thing that I was asked to look over. I helped a little bit with making this a bit, but I haven't gone through the entire thing before. Figured I'd show it off since I was asked to, as well as I think it would be just a bit of a good resource for people to go over. I got some music in the background. If it ever gets too loud, please let me know, because I just record all this live. There's no cuts, so yeah, I gotta adjust it live. Counting on YouTube and Twitch chat to keep things in mind. So, just get started with the introduction. Competitive Splatoon knowledge is usually very disorganized or presented in an unclear way. This becomes an issue when understanding game modes or creating team comps. This led to players being unsure why they're picking a certain weapon or how to play a certain weapon. Made this guide to push the community when it comes to understanding game modes and creating team comps. Help for most players to break out a mid-level or are mid-level already. Included many resources that I'd be surprised if higher level players didn't learn something. And yeah, we're basically gonna get started. We don't need to go over the TLDR version or anything. We're just gonna go through the different styles of comp. This is usually pretty based on the styles video that I did like a few months back. So we'll see if everything is updated. So, how do I want to start with this? Do I just scroll through? How to use this document? Oh, okay, there's just the sections. Okay. Oh, this is just table of contents. I'm dumb. Okay. Awesome. Fundamentals of Splat Zones. Hot zone, color spots, creating fights with it in mind. Hot zone is the area around the zone where people can contest. So the area in green. Burning specials to get picks outside this area can often create spots where on retake you don't have enough power to counter push. On pushes you don't have enough resources to stop the retake from entering. You still want to play for lockout, just be careful when burning too much stuff outside the hot zone. Okay. I think that's fairly self-explanatory, yeah. Not too difficult a concept here. You have to use some specials to get to the zone. You want to use some specials on the zone. It's very important that not all specials can be used over here. You're going to be in trouble. Again, Pink Puffy Pastry made this. I have their blue sky right here, so for those who missed the beginning. Color spots from mid to the opponent's spawn. As the side of the pushing after capping zone, you want to get from the opponent's yellow spot to green, blue, and finally red. Okay, why are these different colors? I'm guessing there's like a purpose. Or is it just to describe one after the other? Okay. Make sure your side can't be flanked easily for a powerful lockout. Yeah, so like if you push up here, you need someone to watch this right side. Self-explanatory there. As a side retake, you want to take back your color spots by defeating opponents, setting up trades, or throwing out paint specials like strike at the zone, forcing paint to punish overextending your passive teams, like specials that can cut off attention. Map control and picks. Picks are there to get map control at the end of the day. If you can take space for free that doesn't involve risking a fight, that is good. This also goes for the reverse. If you're giving up space for nothing, even if you keep your life, if you are backing off, and like if you back off of space and you stay alive, but the opponent gets a new position, you still lose value. You cannot die and still give up objective. This is like a very common thing in solo queue. I have a name for players who do stuff like this. I call them KD Warriors. Which is the mentality that if you look good on the KD screen at the end of the game, you did good. That is not true. There are some players I have seen who have like no deaths, and it's because they play like a splatter shot or a frontline weapon, and anytime they are remotely challenged, they just run behind their backline. And look, you're like 9-1. You died like one time, so that means you did good. But no, in the actual game, you give up every important part of the map. Obviously, very extreme example, but I think it's worth pointing out, because there's a lot of basic solo queue advice that's just like, make sure you don't die. And like, on a surface level, it's not wrong, but once you like start getting a little bit better at the game, it is not as simple as just don't die. Don't have feed because any map control will get immediately taken back. Yes, obviously if you're dead, you can't hold space either, though. So, it's not free either way. Understanding the strong side and weak side of the map is key for taking space. Strong side is the side with more resources and or more powerful weapons. Weak side would be the side that's easier to push into because of lacking these. You can contest the enemy play for more on the strong side, while on the weak side it's worth using IDs if you have less. Okay. This is like an odd example here for me. Like, I get what they're going for with this, but I wouldn't say there's like... What side is like your strong and weak side for retaking is very much dependent on the comp you're running. Like, for some comps, dropping right side here is really easy. If you have, like, a lot of HP specials, if you have a lot of range. Like, if you have something like a crab that can drop here, or a bubble, or, like, a long-range weapon like a squeezer or a sword, then going over here isn't, like, too difficult. But I think what's trying to be pointed out here is the majority of enemies you're going to deal with will be on the strong side, and the other side will be closer to, like, less occupied. Less people watching that area because it's less important. You know, the side on the left has more cover, more places to move, has a wider angle you can get to as defenders because of the island, stuff like that. Using advantages, the timer. Comps that are built well often have multiple ways to put opponents on a clock. Special timer, if they don't interact, specials will flip zone. Turf timer, we will outpaint them and take up the whole map. Matchup timer, we will bully them out of position with our main weapons. This is very good. This is, like, very simple, like, kind of 3 main points you played to, like specials, turf, or matchups. A lot of really good comps to this game just stack into one advantage. Like, a comp that just flat out outpaints everything is very common, or a comp that fights everything. And if you're obviously trying to mix multiple of these together, you're going to have a bit of a harder time finding advantages, because if you're trying to have a bunch of weapons that paint well and fight really well, you might not actually have a comp that does either of those very well. You might just have a mix of both, and get run over by any comp that just specializes into one. Because if you mix in both, like, paint and kill power too much, then any comp that paints is going to paint better than you, and any comp that kills is going to kill better than you. So, you know, you're going to run out of problems that way. So, like, this can be very important. For example, if you watch the tournament run I did this weekend, we have, like, the Dread Slosher Stamper comp. What advantage does that mostly spec into? It's matchups. It's fighting. We have a third midline weapon. We have a lot more high damage options, so we need to play to our fights. We're not going to win if we fight specials to specials, because our output just isn't as good, and our specials aren't going to be as good as whatever our opponents are running. So we play to fighting, bullying people out of position. If you play around a Neo Splash, you're probably playing for this one. So it very much varies on what you're doing. Yeah? Okay. The way you want to play out a team fight changes if you have more or less advantages compared to the opponent. You need the awareness to understand what resources you have versus your opponents. So you have major and minor advantages. Major advantages can include head count, turf, specials. Minor advantages can be things like zones paint, positions. I would say positioning should be in major advantages. This is often more important than these. If you have people in good positions, that will probably decide you the fight. So I think this should be up here. Noise, you can see them, but they don't see you. This is also just line of sight, which is something very important to think about. Frame data, which is just certain weapons having downtime or uptime. Once sloshing machine shoots once, there is a set amount of time before it can shoot twice. If it's just a 1v1 and you can kill it faster than it shoots twice, there's nothing it can do. You know, same example for any other weapon with slow kill time or bad frame data. If you are fighting a paintbrush, there's a certain amount of time before it attacks or moves, because that's how the weapon works. Utility. More advantages. Fight more aggressively. You don't want to start feeding, but you don't want to push for map control. Even advantages. React to what the opponent does. If they try to solo fight, use your weapon, or use your weapon good at fighting to match that. Okay. If they special, counter special. If they try to paint zone, outpaint it. Go for mid-ground plays. Think about the plays the opponent can reasonably do. Go for options that cover them. If you have less advantages, you have to hit and run, either landing a shot on the opponent before they get them, or escaping. Again, retreating is still bad in this game. Giving up space for free is still bad. So when your number's down, you have to be really careful not to give up too much space. If you're going to back up, how far can you back up? If you're not going to back up, how are you going to try to slow them down? Can you pull them a certain area of the map that they don't want to go? Can you shark and play for potential kills on them? Can you flank and get behind them and force them to deal with you while your team regroups? Like, what exactly is the play? Play fast to keep your opponents off guard. All landing on their strong side in hopes of burning one of their specials away from your team, slowly building special charge. Choose what you think will be the best impact. Why zones is seen as the best mode, most fundamental of the 5 modes. Turf weighs heavily on the last second much more than any other mode, or just later in the game in general stronger in Turf. Tower is unfair lockouts, mostly because of the special advantage. Reborn did a good video on this. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend you check it out, but basically every mode has a passive special charge that builds based off the state of the objective. So you have to be very aware of what that is and how it plays to your team or the other team. I should pin this document here while I'm here, actually, so here you go, guys. Anyway. But point being, Tower can have very, very unfair lockouts with a special advantage. Rainmaker has lockouts, plus you can get 30, 40 points in a few seconds. Clams can fill chaotic and random, and can be cheesed for 40 plus points in a single burst. Was this written before CB? I'm not sure. Or, not CB, before the Kraken change. Okay. And there's, like, Rainmaker stalling, obviously. I feel like you can't dive into why zones is the best mode and explain it this little. Because, like, you can just make a point like this about zones. Oh, but zones, it's so easy to paint over the zone with a special weapon or something. Like, you can talk like this for all the different modes. I think this is just, one, too complicated of a topic for this. This would be, like, its own entire document. Two, not fundamental to the rest of the document. Zones is seen as the most common mode. It's the standard one you see in competitive play. It's the most standard one for top players. In this case, you're just teaching people how to play the game. Okay, zones is the most, you know, this one's fine. It's the most fundamental of the game modes. It's the most common. If you learn how to play zones, you'll know how to play the other modes. So this is focused on this mode because this is the most important mode to understand how it works. If you don't understand how to play zones, you don't understand how to play any of the other modes. So you need to learn how to play zones. That does not work the same the other way around, though it does correlate. How to make a comp. Building around a viable weapon or weapon pair. See this tweet for more information. Okay, hold on. There's two posts here. I'm going to open them both and see what these are real quick. Okay, these are just different threads on how to build a comp. And what weapons are good. Okay, I'm not going to get into those. That's separate from the doc. Okay. So I'm not going to cover these. These are separate. And there's also a lot of talk discussion here, so I'm just going to cover the comps that are already posted. Weapon identities and team comps. Most weapons have a very clear identity, but others can be more ambiguous. Nice to keep it in mind when building. Here are examples of weapons that fill into multiple roles in a comp. Okay. It's like a good time for me to talk about this. Remember how a bit earlier I said that if you try to spec into things that just kind of do multiple options, like if you try to build a paint and fighting comp but don't specialize in either, you get run over? That is the same thing with quote-unquote flexible weapons, right? If you have a weapon that's like okay at painting and okay at fighting, but not good at either, that weapon is probably dog shit. Because it's a team-based game. You're gonna have other people that just run the good fighting weapons and play to let those weapons fight, and run good painting weapons and play to let those paint. So that being said, I don't think any of these fit multiple roles. I don't think you really want to classify anything in that. The only one I would kind of think about is Flingza, and that's purely because Flingza's status as a backline weapon is very debated. Table of contents on the left side is cut out. I have the doc pinned, but I'm gonna go through them anyway, so you guys will see when we get into each one. Okay, so my point being, you pick these, and they have some flexible traits. Like if you have a mint, you're gonna have more painting. But like, it works with the mint because mint is still primarily a slayer. It's just a slayer that can also paint well enough to like, you know, have that be an advantage. But if mint didn't kill well enough, its flexibility doesn't matter. Mint will never be a support. Ever. It's always a slayer. Simultaneously, this is what I found out with Dread, right? Dread is a support. It has some decent fighting power. You can do some things with Reef Slider. But if you're picking it to replace one of your slayers, you will notice the lack of slaying power. You have to treat it as a support. Forge is the same thing. I'm sorry, Keo. I know you're a big fan of the Forge. Forge sees success when it's played as a support. Because that's what they made it good at in this game. Can it kill a little bit better than like a normal support? For sure. But it still needs to be the support. Same for Zimmy. Same for Rapid needs to be the Slayer. Dooley needs to be the Slayer. This is not your support. You can try to build some comp around the fact if you do like Dooley Mint and you want to drop a short range shooter entirely, maybe you could do something with that. But like in 99% of cases, I don't think you should go with, oh, okay, I have I don't know, I have a 52. I have a support and a fighter here. No, you have a fighter. You just have a more flexible one. Okay. Speed and ability to make solo plays. The idea is of maneuver warfare, very important to the game because the game is fast. Making comms for both a variety of strong backups and tools. Multiple good fighters, speed, powerful specials, good painters. Yes, okay. So, let me label it this way. When you are in a game, something can and will go wrong. When you are building comps, you should build them with the assumption that something goes wrong. If one of your players goes down, if you don't have a specific special, can you still do whatever you're trying to do? If you are absolutely hopeless at capping a zone because one player is dead, then your comp is going to fucking lose. Because that player might die sometimes. It's gonna happen. If you have a comp that can't fight if one guy is dead, if you have only one special to get in with and no other way to deal with a range disadvantage, stuff like that, you cannot have one answer for it. This is where speccing into multiple things is useful. If you play a backless comp, for instance, here's a good example. Say you have no anchor weapon. You're running like, I don't know, like some really aggressive set of 4 weapons, like a few mid lines, a few front lines. If you have one long-range special on that comp, and no Tentabrella, because Tent Shield is its own goddamn way to get in this game, if you have, like, Azuka is your only way to close the gap, and you have, like, I don't know, a wave, a reef slider, and a hammer, you're doomed! The second your Zuka guy is done, or there's no Zuka on the field, there's no long-range threat. Ever. And other teams will exploit that. So, multiple ways. Have different ways of going about it, even if something goes wrong. Each teammate needs to understand what the comp is looking for. This allows players to make independent decisions quicker. This speeds up the game massively, and something Japan is very good at. Yes. Good coordination happens naturally. It happens from people doing their own things, and those things naturally work with each other. That's why it's so important to build synergistic comps right now. Because by having weapons that naturally work with each other, you will have synergy, rather than having weapons that don't work with each other and are desperately trying to. When it happens normally, it happens faster. And typically, the faster a decision is made, the more you can get away with the decision being weaker. A really smart decision that takes 5 seconds to happen will lose to an okay decision that happens in 1 second, because you will get run over before you get your good plan. A quote from Zenith over here. Once your mechanics, positioning, understanding weapon rolls, all that is good, you can focus on the things Japan is good at, like constant pressure and smooth gameplay with movement. Talking about splat rate. Playing with JP players is inspiring, always active on the map, selfless plays, going where they need to be useful. This is just positioning stuff. They know where to be, and so things always happen. That's where the pacing difference comes from. There's no hesitation, there's no sitting back where it's not needed, there's an opportunity to take space, and they take it. We are bad at that. Even our top players are bad at that. Okay. Building an understanding of the advantages that your comp has over the enemy team. Better AoE, better fighters, stronger and more frequent specials. AoE is area of effect. I'm saying this once. Having strong mechanics and being able to hit shots. Yellow side is more turf, more better positions, better matchups, more players alive, more ults. Purple side is getting farm. Okay. A lot of major things you can do by the right abilities. Okay, this is just an abilities tier list. I'm not going to talk about this. It's like mostly right though. But this just isn't really related to the comp stuff. Alright. That is the end of Zones 101. Now we can talk about specific comps. Let's start with the first one, the most common one. Double midline. Oh my god, we got a lot. Okay. Okay, these are the standard. Yeah, these 4 are your main 4. That makes sense. This is fine. This is not a support. But outside of that, sure. This is, like, you can argue it's a support when you have, like, a roller. That, like, actually plays around the screen. You have these weapons, this does not do shit. This is fine. Okay. Right, let's get something sample. Pen! Time your shots so there's no gap between them. Arcing shots upward sometimes to maximize paint. With pen? They just mean looking up. Arcing is not a good term for this, because it doesn't arc. You just go straight. You're just aiming up. Hiding pen laser behind walls. Putting sprinklers in spots that are hard to hit or that protect you from players running in. Placing coolers in spots where players can grab them easily behind walls or at different height levels. And mirrors, think about a risk reward. Fighting his pen without putting the other pen in a scary spot. Okay. Babysit zone was your shots on sprinkler. Deminion on the enter zone and force them to move into cover. Enable your mid lines to play more aggressively for fights when making them cooler and providing paint. Okay, the thing this is missing is I don't like... Pen is not the main thing to be painting zone. That's the support's job. Pen is very good at fighting. You want them shooting the other people as they enter zone, not shooting over the zone. If you play with, like, a Splash or a Dread or a Shot or whatever, right? They're painting zone primarily. The Pen should be looking for kills. If there is, like, a ton of paint on the zone, then both paint. Like, if you have strikes going off on the zone, you need to outpaint it, then the Pen better be helping you. It's going to be hard to hold it by yourself regardless of what support you play. But typically, that's the support's job. Sometimes the support will be out fighting with the team. Maybe they have, like, a Splashes and a Crab, and obviously can't paint as well while they're in Crab, then sure. Is Pen healthy for the game? Yes. Mint. Comfortable with combos, dash slashing at unpredictable angles. Make your super jumps hard to camp. Know how to use the charge beams, not let it break from a wall. Great usage of your kit. Use bombs where people are grouped or in spots that trap them. Bubble placement. Start fights with high HP and dittos so you don't get one shot by a charge slash. Makes sense. Find timings to dive in a bubble. Be careful camping jumps. Get your bubble off when the opponents don't have strike and crab to help stay in the map longer. Versus edit versions, be careful fighting without cover, because edit can beam you before you actually get your slash off if it's full charge. Use your solid paint to hold off zone. Find angles that opponents into the opponent's backline with bubble. Yeah, you're either like sharking in the center or you're going for off angles. Hi, you Snipe. Are you still like around in the game? I haven't seen you in a bit. It's good to see you. Okay. This is just a basic breakdown of all the weapons. Right. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna skim through this here, because this section alone is 31 pages, so we're gonna be here all day if I'm reading all of this right, so. If you want to go more in depth on any of these weapons, I'd recommend checking out the comp itself. But I'm not gonna be able to read all of these. Again, this part is 31 pages, and there is also dive, stall, hide and seek, all comps one-on-one, and special things I have to read through in their entirety. So yeah, we're moving. Right, we got what? This is like Splash, Mint. Okay, let's get to comp-specific stuff. We have Splash, Bucket, Mint, and Pencil, right? Multiple self-sufficient guns that can carry. Team Strength is a mass ability to combo and snowball off of powerful specials. You have Bubble, Strike, Crab all together, give you a lot of momentum. You have powerful main weapons that are easy to get kills. Also have an easy time working with each other. Support naturally gives ways for these other two weapons on the comp to one shot at a large distance away. To play off of that. And take fights in off angles. Stack damage on the same target. Weapons aren't slow, but Bucket and Mint can struggle versus certain things like cooler shooters and swords. Okay. Being able to switch from defensive play to playing around Pen LOS. Play around cycles. Okay. And variations. Okay. I'm, like, rethinking how I want to approach going over this. Because this is clearly a lot, and I don't have all the time. So, okay. I'm going to have to say a lot of this is if you want to read more, you should read the document itself. If any of these styles interest you, or weapons, or whatever you want to look into, that you can look into it. But I want to see if there's, like... How do I want to cover this? Okay. I think, like, the definition here is very, broad. Oh, nice, there I am. The definition for this is very broad for double midline. This is, like, a lot larger of a stretch than I would use. Like, when I labeled my double midline comp, when I did my video on it, I had, like, maybe a third of these weapons on screen. I think what's important to note with, like, a standard double midline comp, if I'm going to break this down more broadly, right? The idea is you have two weapons that are very strong at fighting. Your comp is built around these two guns. These are the most important weapons in the comp. The other two weapons should be around them. So, for example, if you have, like, Mint Slosher, it makes sense to have a Splash. You play around the burst combos to help those weapons. If you play around, like, a Squeezer, for instance, less painting power, more self-sufficient, generally run something like End Splash with it. Make sure you actually have the paint to work around the weapon. But you're not picking End Splash for End Splash, you're picking it because you have a Squeezer. which is also typically why you don't see double midline with any of these other anchors. Though to give some credit, you do sometimes. Like, I've seen in area cups there have been like Stamper, Slosher, you run an end zap, and then you have a leader. That comp isn't inherently that different from Pen and like a standard short range shooter over here, right? You just have a leader instead of a Pen. It's like, that's the general concept. But I think this is good to go over how each weapon fights, what they play around, what they're good and bad at. So it's a good overview of each of the weapon strong suits and weak suits and what they're good and bad at. So like, that's a good thing to be aware of, I think. That's great. I'm going to read over Dread section real quick. Stupid amounts of paint. Yes, painting range is most important. This thing will paint far away compared to other short range shooters. Like, you can paint much further away from you than a splash can. That makes it easier for your teammates to swim in shots, and it makes it easier for you to paint over other people. Like, when you're fighting another midline weapon, you're probably painting around where they're able to go. You don't get that as, like, a splash. Chip damage and combo numbers. Slider can allow strings. Yes, if people go in with it. Inconsistent ultimates. Fair. It is. Worse at dueling when it gets rushed down. You have a limited kill time, so you have to be careful with that. And then Bucket and Dread can struggle into stally comps if it deals with high amounts of HP specials, trying to slow down momentum. Okay. Yeah. I think overall this covers about everything possible for this, so... Dive. Okay. This, everything besides the Tetra here. The Tetra should be in the dually slot. And everything else here probably shouldn't even be mentioned. This is just a different way of playing the game, especially with Tent. So I don't know if I'd really classify this as dive. Okay. Comp-specific tips. I'm going to go over this for each one, because this is general for each comp, yeah? Avoid forcing picks with your Slayers. Taking space aggressively and securing picks and chip is what the comp is made for. However, taking space with this comp without keeping it in mind, your teammates can follow up on it or give jumps quickly. If you're playing together, this comp has many ways to close out a fight and many chances to pick a fight. Please keep in mind QR/cooler and when they're up. You shouldn't hard engage in their base if neither of them are active. Make sure the junior is always near another player. Use AoE bombs mainly. In this comp, you're not going to have a lot of AoE on a dive comp normally in order to get space. Zip can cross up the enemy or force engagements. It's also more often than not going to be your source of angle or retake since it covers a range disadvantage, especially when you're going in. Chances to break the opponent here. You're very good at regroup is more what I would say. Like, if your comp goes down and you're giving jumps, it's very easy to give jumps to swords and dualies. They have a very high chance of finding a kill with the sword and dualie on landing, especially Mint, because, you know, giant hitbox. So it's more, you can fight, regroup, and immediately start fighting. If you have, like, a range that jumps in, the range wants paint to move around in. The range is a slow weapon. It needs to space correctly. If you have a dualie that jumps in, they're just gonna fucking roll around and fight people. Right? That's what makes this comp different. You have 2, sometimes even 3 weapons that can jump in and immediately start fighting. They're not very picky. So that's something that you want to be aware of with this. Macro tips. There's a lot of tips with dualies midline meta. Since you have combo-based slayers, jumps are difficult to cap, fast burst damage. Less so here. You have this with Stamper. I wouldn't say you have this with Mint. Penitent backlines, crab bubble cooler. These are more important, crab and bubble, because these are your alternate jumps. You are, like, if your pen is down or your pen is more aggressive or whatever, you jump to your crab. Your crab can turn into an anchor, you give your jump to the crab, and it's safe. You bubble, you jump to the bubble, and you can fight in. So the fact that you fight in with, like, these specials already, like, you can jump in more easily, that's really important. Hi, Pastry, welcome in. I went over basically the first few sections. I'm basically just going in order. I'm not going through everything with the comp-specific sections, because it's just a lot, and I can't stream too long. But I'm basically giving my thoughts on, like, the broader definitions of the comp. So that's where you are. I'll keep the VOD up on Twitch, so you'll be able to catch up here if you want. Anyway. Let's see. Playing around cycles, special spam. Playing the who can see game is good for this style. Yes, I agree. You're trying to find splits where you have, like, player advantage on fights. Would Zip Recall count as an alternate jump or no? Yes. Zip Recall, Jet Recall, Kraken Recall. All count. Kraken would be really good with backless dive type stuff. Really good with it. Because you just pop a Kraken, and you have a recall that's really hard to find, and then the Kraken guy will constantly take attention off your team. Unfortunately, there's like 0 Kraken weapons that work with dive, other than like heavy deco, and you're never gonna see a heavy deco. Coastline Bow, thank you so much for the tier 1. Would S-Blast work with dive? No. It's better with it. Like, if you're gonna pick a blaster with dive, it's probably the best one you can pick, because like it can burst bomb, and it has like different fighting ranges, so it's less picky. But like, it still needs paint on the floor. It's not gonna be able to fight anywhere, like other weapons can. 96 Deco is a slow gun. That shit is not a dive weapon. That gun is literally made to slow the game down. You cannot pick it, or I'm not gonna say you can't. You shouldn't pick it with a comp that doesn't want the game to be slow. It's making this continue to be an amazing resource. I did not make this document. I've clarified. I'm just going over it here. Unless you mean making the stream going over it, in which, thank you. But yes, this was made by Pastry. Thank you so much for the 200 bits. Fundamentals, soft and hard engages. Soft engage have little resources. Yeah, so like if you're engaging without many of your specials, you're like playing to get trades that aren't too risky for you. Maybe you have cooler or QR respawn. And you're kind of just playing to bait resources out of the other team so that your next fight is going to be easier. Stuff like that is important, then hard engages are when you're committing. Okay. I'm not going to talk about coolerless, because I think 2 things. 1, I agree with this, it's probably not worth it. 2, if it is worth it, you're doing Tenebrella shit, and that is an entirely different thing than any of this, so it's not worth talking about. In my opinion, if you do, like, coolerless, you're playing some weird tent comp, like Tent Flingza, Tent Brush, stuff like that. You're playing around that, and that's a whole other thing. So I'm not going to get into that. Okay. I would not say Seawell is a dive weapon. Way too long charge. These all have impact instantly. Explo's even slower to be here too. But Explo's entire kit is built around making up for that. You have 2 fighting tools on your weapon kit, so it's harder to rush you down, right? This doesn't have that. The Sensor and Wave are not going to stop you from being ran down. And you're going to get ran down because you have front lines that are going to go die half the game, because that's their job, and you need to give jumps. You don't have the speed to give jumps, you don't have the kit to give jumps, and you don't have the ability to fight enough to have the other team respect you. Like, if you're rushing a C-Explo and they have splashdown, you cannot get too close to them, or you will blow up, which makes it a lot easier for the jumps to get in. There's no respecting the Seawell. You just run it. And like, yeah, maybe sometimes it'll occasionally one-tap you, but most of the time you'll probably be fine. And then, yeah, like I said before, I think the tent stuff is like its own thing. But for the most part, I think this is all fine. Roller here is like, okay. It's awkward on jumps, but like Carbon can still play it fast. Hide and seek. I'm surprised there's no tent here. If you're gonna put 10 into any of these standard comps, it should go in this one. It is quite literally another tool that the roller just hides in. It's like, 10 should be here, if anything. Like, I think 10 makes most sense here. I also would not do blasters in stall. Blasters want combo damage. They want things to work off of. They want other people shooting the same people that shoot at it. These aren't sharking weapons, right? You can play for a direct, but a direct is all or nothing. If you miss the direct, you're cooked. It's the same thing for rollers, but rollers are built around having a giant hitbox so that they don't miss. That's why Mint also works for this. Mint can hide, and it has a big hitbox. So it's easy to not mess it up. If a range sharks someone, and they miss, they're getting shot back. And if you play for range in direct, these things don't help it. They don't pay for it. They don't do combo damage with it. So it doesn't work here. If I'm being honest here, I think my biggest flaw with this doc is I think that the weapon examples that are given here are too general. I get you're not listing them as the standard, but I think you're trying to put as many weapons as possible into each category. And I think it's a bit, like, you have to find a balance between, like, including other weapons so that there's variations, but also you need to have, like, the comps still have to fit a certain idea, and a lot of these weapons clash too hard with the core idea that the weapon comp is building around. Yeah, I don't know. No blasters here, I think. Dapple is fair. Dapple is just really fast, so it's fine. Okay, let's get to the comp stuff. Also, I will say I've read an earlier version of this doc all the way through. I feel like I should clarify this as I'm skimming through things. But some of it might be a little different. Comp-specific tips. Proper painting giving the roller lines to work with is fundamental for the comp. Play around strikes, since when your team is down, the ability to throw in space is, like, valuable here. 10 doesn't have a standard category? Yeah, I mean, everything 10 does is going to be different. I'm just saying, if you're going to try to put 10 into one of these categories, this is the category that makes sense for it. Like, the things 10 tries to do, and the weapons that are picked in this comp are things 10 likes. So you can do it. It's still, like, 10's just less of a, like, it doesn't really hide. But 10 gives a ton of, like, 10 shield is just another thing to hide behind. Like, oh, they might go in with the strikes. They might also go in with the 10 shield. They might also go in with the curling bomb. Like, you just give them one more thing to panic about, and it slows the other team down. It's like, you can totally run it, and it works there. I'd say, like, the least synergistic part is probably the Zuka. And even then, it's like, you typically don't have a lot of range on that comp, so the Zuka helps with that. Countering panic splashdowns with shooting down plus insta-parry directs. I mean, if you're a short-range shooter, you should be able to move out of the way of most splashdowns unless they're in, like, specific positioning, but I don't think that's too relevant here. This is more, like, comp stuff overall. You agree with the shark stuff. Okay. What is this? Military positioning. Positioning tactics that originate from the military. Strong with this comp. Alright, that's new for me. Encirclements, having someone surrounded. Yeah, good luck with that on these maps. If you have the positioning to encircle someone in this game, the other team is fucked up long before this fight is ever going to happen. Like, they have fucked up way earlier. They have already lost the team fight. If someone can circle you in these hallways, you have messed up. Oh, nice. YouTube does that thing where it pauses for no reason. Hey, are you still here? Yes! Don't pause my music, YouTube. Thank you. Combining mobility with spam to make absorbing pushes easier. You have a lot of bombs. You just have a lot of things to poke so that your sharking weapons are more threatening. When you're defending, when you're poking with this comp, you just want to create threats. Oh, my roller might be going over here. Or he might be over here. You might die. Go look at this corner. Go look at this curling bomb. And then your team, like, tries to find a way where they actually go in and kill someone. Okay. Roller benefits from patience when sharking. Yes, you want to give them as much time as possible to go for a play. Don't make them rush their shark. They need to make sure they have the right time. So maybe it means letting 1 or 2 players go past them if they can kill the back line and set up a bubble there, whatever the play might be. Okay. Bunkering is good with the style. Retake is good for you. Get back in. Okay. You do not replace the pen. This one has rare ones here, but this is just straight up you do not replace the pen. You play pen on this comp. Maybe edit for very few maps. I don't think you do crab edit ever. I don't even think you do red pen ever. This is like the most picky one. You need a lot of active specials for your team to get in with this comp. You need it, need it, need it, need it, need it. So you can't have this. I don't think this works. You need Zukas to get in, or strikes, or whatever you're going to throw at them. So the comp struggles with that. If you have a red pen, you still have a storm, but then you have storm on a delayed red pen, and your zap might get killed, because nothing's going to keep them away from the zap, because the zap is bait a lot of the time for the roller. So you don't want your cooler guy as the bait weapon. And splash shot spot. I don't think you do junior. You already have a bubble with roller or mint. You don't need another bubble. The junior bubble is not going to help you on entry. Everything else here is fine. Mint should absolutely be here in the 52 slot. Like, mint is probably better over the 52, if anything. Like, it's much better at sharking. it paints like a little more reasonably for the team, and it gives you another bubble. So you can run double bubble and have it be on your fighting weapons. And now your sharks are even more threatening because you have 2 things that can just set up great barrier and just secure space. Very valuable. Yeah. I can see mint being here too. That's fine. You can do no roller and have a mint instead and still do the same thing. But I think mint's better with the roller rather than replacing it. Yeah, so you mentioned the one-shot stuff and, like, less mobile stuff, but, like, you're not coordinating around the blaster here. That's the problem. There's just nothing working with it. This is a little better. Okay. Let me back up a second. This is a good thing to talk about, because we got the Squeezer. Why is Squeezer fine with the roller stuff? I just talked about how blasters don't work. Right? So let's ask a question here to chat. I want you guys to try and answer this. Why is the Squeezer fine? Why do I not have an issue with this weapon like I do with these weapons? Can anyone take a guess? Paint? Squeezer does not paint. Squeezer paints less than these. Unless you mean something else, but then you gotta be more specific. Because it's Squeezer. That's a valid answer 1 patch ago. Squeezer wants the same stuff as the roller? Yes. There we go. That's one answer. There's like 3 things I'm looking at here that makes it work. But yes, Squeezer also plays for sharks. Can also play for pressure and kills. Is also going to... Okay, I'm giving away number 2. Selfish. Roller gets solo kills. It doesn't need combo damage. All it needs to do is just kill things. If it gets close to it, it's self-sufficient. Squeezer's the same thing. This thing takes 1v1s that are very oppressive. It sustains itself with wall. While it sustains itself, it can be bait. As long as you have the paint, okay? That's close. What about the paint? What else is played with the roller that this also likes? Talked about it a little earlier. End splash. So the comp makes sense. With range, the support doesn't help it. You're not picking something that combos off the blaster or fights with it. You're picking something that paints selfishly. So you have an end splash. But Squeezer loves end splash because it's also selfish. This is the 10 kills, 0 paint. This is 10 paint, 0 kill. So these two work with each other, and these two work with each other, and these two have the same goal. So there's synergy there. There's no clashes. The only downside is you have a little less paint with the Squeezer than you do with like a Mint or a 52. But you weren't picking a paint weapon anyway. So the valuable traits that Squeezer does provide, in terms of its range, in terms of the Wall Zuka kit, are worth it because of that. So it's the entire picture. The whole comp needs that natural synergy that you want to build around here. That's why something like this can work. So look at all your weapons when you're building a comp. If you throw in this 4th weapon, do the other 3 all work with it? You want to look for as many yeses as possible, because again, something might go wrong in the comp. And if it goes wrong, things need to still work with each other. This comp has that. If the splash is dead, the roller can paint you, or sorry, the pen can paint you in. If your roller is dead, your Squeezer can still kill. Regardless of what point you talk about. Squeezer takes advantage of strike very well. It likes the paint, etc., etc. Okay, where were we? In terms of matchups, yeah, versus double midline, you're basically out, like, you're just sharking them and playing for a really oppressive lockout. Double midline doesn't really have the resources to take care of this comp. That's why after the midlines got nerfed and, like, Zenith's group ran this comp, it did so well. Because the range and Squeezer don't have a way to fucking deal with this. It's like, oh shit. There's like a roller and mid sharking in, they have 2 bubbles, and we cannot deal with them with our weapons. Our weapons can't deal with it. So you get locked out and you lose. If you're playing midline into it, you need to, like, really play your advantage and keep them out. It's worth giving up zone if it means you're going to keep control overall. Right? And then dive, you just shark, punish. Be careful not to get outsped. So make sure you take space where you can. Alright. There's a little bit of info here about the other modes. Yeah, Atomic is both roller and squeezer. They did not play squeezer roller. Squeezer roller is not common by any means. I'm simply talking about why it works. It's not the best option. It's not what you'll see most often. Currently, what we see right now is Squelchers. But Squelcher's roller is not hide and seek. Which, yes, that's a good thing to bring up. Squelcher roller is an entirely different thing. This is not playing hide and seek. Because the only thing that is hiding is the roller. But it's not playing around the whole team playing that same game. The Squelchers is there because it's active, constant bait. It's not hiding. It's not trying to kill anyone. It's trying to be an annoying nuisance. And then the Splash just chips damage to make the Squelcher lethal. Or it just provides fighting power for the roller to get in. Because it's still a Splash. It's still broken. Are we good on music here? Let me check this isn't running out. Okay, good, we are. Alright. Fight around checkpoints. Yes. Strongholds are power positions. Yeah, so this is great example here, right? If you play second check, you need this area. If you cannot push this area, your Tower Rider is never going to make it here. It's like second through third check, like all the way through third check, you need this entire area. So that's where the map plays around. Same thing here, right? If you push tower to this part, you need space ahead. Flank around, jump across, have like a blaster down here, whatever it is, you have to have pressure on this platter. You're never going to move. Yeah. Tower control is very kill focused. On defense, you don't get a whole lot of special advantage. It's a very snowbally mode. So you're playing for big kill streaks. A lot of main weapon power is very strong here. AoE is very strong here. Right? Hitting around tower. With range. Yes, Ink Brush is bad at it. Range is good at it. Bombs are good at it. Curling is bad at it. Good examples. Clear team fighting. Very snowbally. Very stally at times. Right? You're stalling because of passive special advantage, right? You keep the tower somewhere hard to contest. Your team is building specials, but you don't have a guy committing on the tower. The tower's not in a position that allows the other team to contest it. That's what makes it snowbally. If Starburst and S2 is very, very good at stalling tower games to 5 minutes, they just push you to like 20 on Blot, and then they'd keep the tower at first check and just perma-lock you out on Plat. And they would just constantly get more specials than you. So you had to be, like, really out-fighting them in Splatoon 2, where all your main weapons suck. So good luck with that. Okay. Where's Rain? Rainmaker! Rainmaker is a defensive mode. Thank you. This is important. I will see Rain as the fastest pace mode in the game. Rain is so aggressive. Rain is not aggressive. Rain is defensive. There are quick pushes that happen. When you get an opportunity, you get points faster than any other mode. But the majority of the mode is either preventing those opportunities from happening or waiting for yours. You are patient. You cannot play fast, or your Rainmaker will constantly get blown up. You don't even want to grab Rainmaker until it's a good time, because then the other team gets special advantage, and while they're getting special advantage, you have one fewer special. So it's very slow. You're playing for the right times, you're playing for good pushes off of one instance, and then you're playing to camp those pushes. On defense, you are playing to stall. Bomb the crap out of checkpoints, throw Toxic Mist where they want to go, spam specials where they want to go, and slow them down. Because eventually the clock runs out and they blow up. It's like you can play for all the time in the world, really, as long as your players are up. That being said, I would not call it a snooze fest. This isn't productive. This is just, like, personal opinion there. Obviously, when Rainmaker breakaways still happen, they are hype. Like, it has... Rainmaker is a mode that overall plays slow, but it has its big spectator moments. The 30 seconds Rainmaker is interesting. It's more interesting than any other mode in the game. That's why people like it. People don't remember Rainmaker for the 4 minutes some team got stalled out and lost the game. They remember it for that one breakaway push someone got where they got the lead. Right? So, like, you can acknowledge that's not the majority of the game, but that moment still happens. It is still hype. You have to balance that, though. Is that worth it right now? Personally, I don't think so, but I get why some people think otherwise. Right, Rain has 1 checkpoint to break through. Break whenever it wants. Rain carrier enough 2 checkpoints. Okay. Yes, DPS should be brought up here. Rainmaker is very centered around DPS. If you kill fast, you can kill the Rainmaker more quickly before they get points. If you kill fast, you can pop the Rainmaker shield. Shield DPS is very important because if you pop shield, you get a shit ton of map control and you get a shit ton of special charge. So being able to pop shield very quickly matters. Consistent emphasis on picks. I would not say it's more pwn than tower. Sharking is very important. Rain can make cool plays, has some dynamic moments with a unique main weapon. Very stally, very cheesable at times. The maps for it suck. Yes. Then we got a rapid. Alright. Clams! Clams is chaotic. Clam pushes can snowball extremely hard. Yes. Clam Blitz is... Remember how I just talked about Rain is like nothing happens and then everything happens? That is Clam Blitz as well. Nobody can push forever because you need to win multiple team fights, and every team fight you're losing clams because of all the kills. But then once one team gets a breakaway, all of a sudden 60 points are gone. That is very common. Every player influences objective. That's the most important thing. Cheese pushes I wouldn't really talk about. I don't think this is as prevalent. Like, crack and cheese you can still do, but it's way harder. Slider cheese is just not that good. To be honest. Like, there's not really any other form of prevalent cheese. You could talk about, like, bubble or, like, vacuum or crab near basket to stall. But that's just a normal push at that point. That's not cheese. Brute force pushes dumps all your specials to get in. Yes. Teamfight pushes are winning a fight and going in. This is just standard. This is not really a Clam Blitz thing. There's just different kinds of pushes that happen normally. Gradual push of winning mid, moving up the map, and a couple of members going up to score while others stay in mid. This should be less common with teams that fight. They should just kill your special resources. Yeah, these kind of cooler jumps, that's a disadvantage of like jumping in and scoring, is you get wiped. And you get wiped at the same time. Like, you all jump in and you all die at once. So if you don't have cooler regroups, you're all respawning at the same time as the map is completely open for a very long period of time. Want to pick up a pity clam, pretty much only when you can score it. You want to keep the pity since it's an extra 20 points, and you don't have to keep maintenance. The thing that keeps the pity clam strong is maintenance. If you have a power clam, your location is visible. There's a downside. Holding the objective naturally penalizes you, right? And someone has to be responsible for those clams. The pity clam is no investment. It will always be there. No one has to hold it. It doesn't give anyone away. Like, yeah, you have to go back there and pick it up eventually. But, like, until you do, there's no downside. Pod locking. Okay. This is like a technical thing you can do. You can manipulate clam spawns, for those who don't know. This has been a thing since S2. Is it practical to set up in the middle of a very fast-paced game? No. Practically never. So yeah, often not worth is very accurate here. Can feel dynamic, rewards coordination very well, yes. I mean, the thing is, like, less of cheese and more, it's just hard to push. The baskets are far away, there's a lot of team fights that get rid of clam, so often there just isn't present objective. Does this talk about turf? It does. We get to talk about turf, guys. Turf mentioned. Turf is about timed fights. Okay, remember how I talked about passive special advantage and how important that is to each mode? Turf has none. If the other team is mid and you need a retake, you don't get shit. There's no help for you. Too bad. They have mid, deal with it. Okay. Okay. In the early game, paint, spawn, all of it. I coached Moonlight for the Turf War Open recently. And the amount of times I had to tell Shadow, go back to spawn, keep painting, you're not done yet. Go back to spawn, keep painting, you're not done yet. All of it. It's like an eel tail. This purple, yellow, and this bit down here, all of it should be done by first minute. Every single bit, and it should be done well. It shouldn't be lazy. It should be all of it. Why? Because later in the game, you don't want to go back here. The later into the game you are in turf, the more valuable everything is, because you have less time. Once it's last 30 seconds, or last 20 seconds, or whatever, that's the last fight that matters, and then the game is over. So if you're prepping for that last 30-second team fight, and you're back here painting, then the other team's going to push up. right? So, like, every team knows it comes down to the last fight, so there's constant setup. There's constant setup around that last fight. So get things done early so that you're ready to set up for that last fight, and your prep work is better than the other team. Yeah, team fights typically happen around certain timestamps, but I wouldn't say this is this predictable. I would only say this one. 30 to 20 seconds is going to be a team fight. Every time. What does pretty far into comps mean? Where are you reading this? I'm not sure what you're pointing out. It just says team fights are key. Okay, engaging with HP or mobility. HP is very strong in S2. Typically, like, actual engage tools are very helpful. Missiles are good in turf because people stand around a lot more and people hide a lot more in turf because there's no objective. So you don't have to be in a specific area other than, like, you know, generally keeping the map. And you can hide and you don't, like, lose anything. So missiles becomes very valuable because it's good into both those things. And missile slow cooldown doesn't matter as much because you can take your time with when you take these team fights anyway. So, like, who gives a shit if it's going to be forever? Like, you can just wait for the cooldown. Restrict movement, throw bombs, damage windows, yes. Invades are when people ignore fighting and run into your base to pull attention. Yeah, so this is, remember Arashi Wiper in Turf War where he would just run behind the other team the whole game? Remember how I mentioned how important this is? Wiper gets here one time after dying 5 times. Your entire base is the other team's color, and now your reflux has to go back here, win a fight with the Wiper, and paint all of this. Meanwhile, while the Wiper's dead and coming back, they're fighting in mid, and now there's a 4v3 over here because your reflux is back here. That's the point of those weapons. If, like, Wiper, Brush, like, stuff like that does that. Okay, Fizzbangs aren't in PBs, I don't care. Fun they're mentioned, but unfortunately we cannot use them, so tough. Very clear and structured fight time, great early game. Good at teaching fundamentals should be on here. You have to understand map control very well. It's very simplified. Higher level teams are extremely consistent in this mode. No. In Japan they are. We don't play this mode. People don't know how to play this mode in the West. And, like, that's because it's boring. I'll say it. I'm not afraid to say it. Alright, weaknesses. One player's experience can often be quite lame. Mid-games have very low impacts. In general, turf is just not... Like, the first 2 minutes are very linear. You know what's gonna happen. It just feels very boring for that reason. The first 2 minutes are extremely predictable, and the last fight means too much. Yeah, you can also missile from spawn, they affect team fight. Yeah, Stamper, I'll mention Stamper in turf. Zips behind, paints behind. Alright. This is TLDR version. Alright, you know what? Let's go through this. This is a nice quick summary. This is a 4-page summary. Look, this is for you guys. All the people who are on Twitter and see this document and go, oh, but I don't want to read. Getting better is hard. This is for you guys. Look, 4 pages. 4 pages. I know I'm skimming over this, but this is because I'm streaming. Anyway. Quick overview. Let's do a refresher, right? Burning specials outside of zone is important. Push opponents away from middle of the map. Keep them far away. Goal of the map is picks for map control. Understand the strong and weak sides. Put together a comp that can take care of the timer through multiple different methods or what method you want to specialize in. Teamfight differently based on the advantages. You have comps like double midline that play to very strong main weapons that you're building around. You have dive weapons that are able to take a lot of fights really fast. They're able to regroup really easily and play the fastest. And you have stall, which has a lot of paint, a lot of sharking threat that forces the opponents to play very carefully, and has very oppressive lockouts. Tower control is structured around objectives. Goal is to try to push into the key parts of the map to keep the opponent away from those, usually through main weapon fights. Rainmaker is a defensive mode. Checkpoints that are more fluid, but they're very scrappy team fights and can get very stally with specials. You're looking for one opportunity and taking it, and then stalling the clock down on the opponent's team. Clams is a chaotic mode, has a lot of different ways to force pushes to happen, a lot of different team-centered objective play, and a lot of stalling moments, but you're generally trying to get into power positions to look for quick scores to get a lot of points off, and you want to be careful not to wipe too much since giving up space is very important. Turf War is about timed fights, team fighting is very important, and it's a lot of setup for getting specific fights you need to win at the right times. Make sure you take space off your specials. You can play around using more of the map geometry since there's no centralized objective, stuff like that. So yeah, I helped out a little bit with this document. As I've said before, I've read a previous version of this document, so I am credited here, so thank you. Appreciate it. And again, thank you for inviting me to go over the stream. These are the people who helped out with it, and this is a wrap-up. Hope this document is one of the guides the best guides you've seen when it comes to modes and playing different comps. We're trying to find knowledge and come to conclusions that push the scene forward. There's a lot of guides on how to play the game in the late 2024. There's a huge push for the scene to create more content, so share your own thoughts on reading and what the document was like. Okay. Look at that, we got through in about an hour. Okay. Obviously, this is not a full summary of the document. I cannot go through all of this. This would take another few hours to go through everything. But this is a good resource, I think. I think for the most part, this covers the basics really well. You get a general understanding of what comp styles are going for and what weapons might work with them. And it's good to see some effort put into getting information out there. So, again, this document will be in the description of the video. And it should already be pinned for the stream. So if you want to check it out, you can there. And yeah, thanks for allowing me to go over this.